What's going on, Dolphins? It is your boy Dillon, and so I got another video for you today. Today's day 3 of the scouting combine, so I got some more information, some more player evaluations and stuff for you. More from Daniel Jeremiah again. Today was defensive line, linebackers. Before I get to that, though, there's a couple other things I want to talk about. First of all, there have been talks about the Dolphins engaging in trade talks with people for Ryan Tannehill. So, I mean, obviously that's been part of the conversation that maybe they'll try and trade him. But honestly, the odds of any team doing that is pretty unlikely. And especially considering the fact that they know they could probably get him for cheaper after we've just outright cut him, because then he would go, we'd have to trade him for that, trade him with his salary cap hit, which, again, in perspective, in overall terms, especially with the increase in salary cap every year and with the way that these contracts get doled out with new record highs like pretty much every year, right? Tannehill's contract's not actually that substantial anymore a couple years into his most recent extension or whatever, but it still would, I mean, his full cap hit is, or the amount he's due for this upcoming year in full, I believe, is like $26 million, but his cap hit, I believe, is only $18.75, and then there'd be like $13 million in dead money or something like that. But anyway, so and the thing is we're not gonna get shit for him, and I know tons of Dolphins fans are like, whatever, just get a 5th or a 4th or whatever the fuck. Nah, man. Look, we took him 8th overall. He was a first rounder, and he's better than what people say he is because of the fact that, he goes out there. Anyway, look, I don't want to get into the, whole big Ryan Tannehill thing, but look, at the end of the day, he's far better than anybody gives him credit for, and nobody, or most people don't take into account the fact that he's always had regime changes with the Dolphins, and he had Philbin for 4 years or whatever who didn't support him, didn't back him up. He's never really had a good offensive line. He still doesn't. He was the most sacked quarterback in the league for the first 4 years. Until last year, he didn't even really have like shit for a supporting cast, but then everybody gets injured. Right, he had his unfortunate injury. I mean, the dude just can't catch a break. He literally bleeds and sweats for this team and for this fan base, but people don't give a shit. People don't care. They're not appreciative. They take things for granted. And then, when we had like Osweiler in there or Cutler in there, then everybody's clamoring for Tannehill because, oh, of course, he's so much better than them. But, then when he's in there, everybody just wants to bitch and moan and complain because he's not Brady or because he's not Aaron Rodgers. Like, get the fuck out of here, man. It's just, you can't have everything. You can't always get what you want. And not only that, but I mean, Jesus Christ, like, if you're going to bitch and complain, at least make sure it's directed in the right way. Tannehill does not deserve the blame that he's gotten for the failures of this team over his tenure here. It's just not fair. It's not factual. Point blank, bottom line, period. Look, I'm just tired. I mean, at the end of the day, all the Tannehill haters are probably going to get what they want. I've been saying this for the past couple months now, or the past month or so now, whatever it is, since, the season ended and these rumors and stuff have been coming up. Look, I mean, odds are, all the Dolphins haters are going to get what they want. They got what they want with Adam Gase being gone, and they're probably going to get what they want with Tannehill being gone. And then, we'll see what happens, man. We'll see what happens. But I've already outlined for you how I feel about Tannehill and the reasons why they should keep him at least until his contract is up. You know, I've talked about why I think it's stupid to chase a quarterback, why we have more important needs like fixing that offensive line, because if we get rid of Tannehill and then still have, you know, that dead money and then have to get another guy, there's nobody in free agency. This draft class sucks, but if you chase a guy, you give away draft capital, whatever. It doesn't even matter. Even if you just took a dude at 13, it's not going to help. It's not going to do anything if you throw that guy into the fire and then he gets murdered because he doesn't have a fucking offensive line. So look, you know, I mean, I've said it enough. I'm not going to belabor it any more than that. But it's just, I mean, we'll see, right? You know, I'm going to reserve a little bit, until, you know, we see what they actually do. If they do release him, if they do trade him, we have to wait and see what happens in the draft coming up and throughout free agency, and then we have to see what happens throughout this year. Honestly, at the end of the day, we're not really going to be able to have any kind of like concrete definitive answers on a lot of this stuff that we've been talking about recently until like this year goes through, right? A lot of it's speculative. The stuff about Tannehill, the stuff about Adam Gase that I've talked about, and some of the predictions I made. I mean, I think that a lot of these moves are just not smart, man. I mean, like I said, I like this coaching staff overall, but a lot of the decisions that have been made since letting Adam Gase go have just not been what, you know, I evaluate to be the proper, most efficient, you know, and best course of action for this team for now, this year, and for the future, as far as being able to build, like, you know, sustainable success and so on and so forth. Anyway, that's enough with that. I just wanted to mention that there are trade talks, and again, you know, most of you Dolphins fans, one way or the other, who hate Tannehill, will get what you want. Either they'll trade him, they won't get shit for him, they'll still have, you know, a terrible offensive line, and then they won't have a veteran quarterback if they get one, you know, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, and so, the next thing I want to talk about, because there's enough about Tannehill, there's enough about that for now. You know, I really am trying to, like, not beat dead horses, you know, the stuff about Gase and stuff about Tannehill or whatever, but unfortunately, you know, I mean, it's in the news, people are talking about it, you know, things are happening, so on and so forth, and I mean, it's still, like, Gase was our coach still just a couple months ago, right? If we get rid of Tannehill, I mean, right now he's still our quarterback. You know, I mean, it's not like, and then it's not like even after they're gone, they're going to be completely irrelevant. You know, there is always that talk about, I mean, I know Gase isn't a player, but there's always that talk about Dolphins players leaving, going elsewhere, and are they really better? There's examples of when they were, and like Wes Welker, for example, he's one that people commonly bring up when they talk about how Dolphins players do better when they go elsewhere, and then there's other players that don't. Like Lamar Miller's doing average. He's kind of in the middle there, right? He's kind of in the middle of the pack. He didn't have as successful a career as, like, let's say Wes Welker did when he left, but he's having a pretty good career in Houston. Then you have, like, Olivier Vernon. He did all right at first, but it looks like the Giants might be getting rid of him, right? So it's a spectrum. It's not black and white. That's another thing that I just get so tired about is people just, and it plays into a lot of the things I've said before. People just look at things like it's just black and white. It's not black and white. There's a thing called nuance, okay? Nuance, what that means is you have a subject, whatever it is, you have a topic, you have an idea, a philosophy, whatever it is, and it's complex, meaning that it's not a the equation is not as simple as 2 + 2 = 4, right? There's a lot more that goes into it. There are a lot more factors and a lot more variables that determine the outcome of, you know, whatever it is. And it's nuance is, you know, taking all of that in together, taking that full context, making sure that you evaluate all of the information, right? Being able to, you know, discuss all of the points and all of the factors and not just cherry pick things because it's convenient or because it proves your point or whatever, right? So it's nuanced, and so there's a lot that goes into it. All right, anyway, so let's see. The next thing is that the Dolphins, another meeting that they are supposed to be having is with defensive lineman Quinnen Williams, who is one of the top defensive tackles in this draft. I don't know if he'll be available at 13, but if he was, and let's say, you know, Garrett Bradbury or someone wasn't there, he'd be somebody I would take for sure. There's a few defensive linemen that are actually pretty good in this draft. We talked about Ed Oliver just a little bit, Quinnen Williams, Nick Bosa, but Nick Bosa is probably going to go in the top 5. Montez Sweat as well. He's actually been linked to the Dolphins quite a bit. But anyway, so they are having a meeting with Quinnen Williams. And so let's get into now the breakdown of some of these players, some of the highlights and stuff from today as per Daniel Jeremiah. So for the defensive lineman, he did highlight Quinnen Williams. He's from Alabama. He ran a 4.83 40, which is pretty fast for a big old defensive lineman. And apparently he led Alabama in tackles last season, which is super impressive considering he's a defensive lineman. Normally, it's like a linebacker who leads the team in tackles. Generally speaking, that's what you want, is you want your linebacker to, you know, or a linebacker. You want your linebackers to do the majority of your tackling. Now, obviously, of course, when I say that, you would want, you know, I mean, in an ideal world, you would never want a running back to get past the line of scrimmage, right? And if that was the case, then theoretically speaking, at least, your defensive line would be shutting that down for the most part. Although, obviously, you know, linebackers and cornerbacks and safeties do play up at the line of scrimmage, you know, at times in different packages. And so, you know, they obviously could be contributors in there as well. But generally speaking, you want your linebackers to be your tacklers, your primary tacklers. Just meaning that you know, you expect your linebackers to lead, you know, in tackles and stuff. Anyway, and it was Daniel Jeremiah also said that he's dominant on his tape, or in his tape. Next is defensive lineman Jerry Tillery from Notre Dame. He's 6'6". He had 8 sacks and 30 tackles last season. Daniel Jeremiah said he wreaked havoc in 2018, and he has great athleticism. So he's another potential defensive lineman that we could take in, you know, the first couple rounds, depending on, you know, where he goes or whatever. So, but so it's looking as it's starting to, you know, shape up, you know, now that the combine's getting close to done and whatever, and, you know, we're starting to get the measurements and the reps and the, you know, drills and all that stuff, right? We're starting to get the bigger picture now with these guys. It looks like actually defensive lineman is a position that'll probably be pretty deep, at least comparatively. So the way it's shaking out right now, I would say I would probably lean towards the offensive lineman in round 1, try and get like a Garrett Bradbury, right? And then maybe we can scoop one of these defensive linemen in the second round, you know, because there's obviously going to be quarterbacks. I'm pretty sure DK Metcalf is going to go early because he's just a monster. You know, and so there's going to be some linebackers that are expected to go pretty high. You know, like I said, Nick Bosa is expected to go pretty high. Some even say maybe number 1 overall. So there's probably going to be a good opportunity to get, you know, some defensive linemen and, you know, a little bit later. So, you know, we might not necessarily have to take a D lineman first in the first round. Try and get, you know, one of the better offensive linemen in the first round. All right. So next is defensive lineman DeMarcus Christmas from Florida State. Daniel Jeremiah says that he is a backup caliber defensive end. His production dropped a bit last year, down to 28 tackles. He needs to work on his pad level. He can get uprooted and controlled a bit, and sometimes can be late off the ball, but he's a flash player. So he's probably a mid-round guy who, you know, would be taken as more of a project player kind of thing or whatever. But he does obviously have some potential and have some things that can be built on. By the way, who was it? I talked about him yesterday. What was his name? Something Lawrence. Had a leg injury. One of the defensive linemen I talked about yesterday. Golly, I can't think of his name. We had a meeting with him. I'm totally blanking. But anyway, you can look back at my video for who it was. We had a meeting with a defensive lineman yesterday. He had a minor leg injury, so he won't be participating in the rest of the combine, or didn't participate in the rest of the combine. I think he hurt himself when he was doing his 40, and so, but it said to be minor, so he should be ready for his pro day, in which he can finish, you know, doing his drills and stuff like that and whatever. But that is obviously will be something to keep an eye on as well. Okay, so then next comes Nick Bosa from Ohio State. He did have an injury that shortened his 2018 season, but he should be, you know, good to go and ready. He obviously did participate in the combine. He is projected to be a top prospect. As I said, some people believe, including Daniel Jeremiah, that he's going to be the #1 overall pick. He ran a 4.79 40. He said that he's the best player in the draft, as skilled as any pass rusher we've seen recently, and he's unblockable on tape. So yeah, he's probably, the odds of Nick Bosa being around at 13 is not likely. But if for some reason he was, right, like if Nick Bosa fell to 13, absolutely fucking take him without question, right? I mean, one, because it's a, you know, position we need to bolster our defensive linemen, our defensive line. We need to get a pass rusher for sure, and he's like the best player in the draft, so yeah, why not? Montez Sweat is up next. Like I said, he has been linked to the Dolphins, potentially at 13. He's from Mississippi State. He had 13 starts in his junior year, in which he recorded 48 tackles. He's 6'6", 260, and he had recorded the fastest defensive line 40 since 2003, according to Daniel Jeremiah, but he didn't say what it was. Anyway, so that's cool. That's good. He's got some speed and athleticism, so if he's got size. He's a big old dude, 260, 6'6", right? So, and he appears to be able to, you know, get in there, cause some disruption, and make some tackles. So if we were to land him, he would, I would say, you know, it would be a good pick. But again, in the first round, as it's shaking out, I think I would rather lean towards the offensive line. If there's a, you know, really high quality offensive lineman there, just because it looks like that position group is a little bit weaker as opposed to the defensive line. It looks like the defensive line is going to be a stronger overall position group, and so we could get, you know, better players later on. Finally, for the defensive lineman is Christian Wilkins. He's from Clemson. He had 57 tackles and 6 sacks. He's quick and explosive getting upfield, but he does need work in the run game. And then he highlighted 2 linebackers from this year from the combine. First was linebacker Josh Allen from Kentucky. He was a first-team All-American. He had 88 tackles in 13 games. He ran a 4.63 40. Daniel Jeremiah says he's a great player. He says he's the 3rd best player in the draft. And he specialized apparently in like covering tight ends. That was like his bread and butter. So, you know, I don't think he would be around at 13, but I personally wouldn't take him there, even if he did drop to 13. Maybe not. I mean, linebackers not, in my estimation. Linebacker's not that high of a need. You know, but whatever. I mean, I would say that's one, especially considering the fact that we have in recent times had difficulty covering tight ends, and that seems to be his specialty. I think that's a case in which I would say I would be happy with that pick. If he did happen to fall to 13 and there wasn't like a better offensive lineman or defensive lineman or whatever, I'd say that's a reasonable pick. And then finally, linebacker Ben Burr-Kirven from Washington. He led the country with 176 tackles, and he also had five and a half sacks. He was first team All-American, and Daniel Jeremiah says his instincts are off the charts. So there you have it. That's everything I got for you guys today. You know, a little trade talk about Tannehill. And then, you know, all these breakdowns for some of the highlights from the Scouting Combine Day 3. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope you guys enjoy my show. If you do, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you hit the bell if you want to get the alerts. Leave your questions, comments, and concerns down in the comment section. And of course, as always, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Dillon Tartaro. And with that, I am out. I'll see y'all soon. Phins up.